Smoke drifts across the frozen streets of Stalingrad. 1942, carried low by a wind that never stops. The cold dominates everything, sinking into metal, fabric, and bone, turning movement into effort and stillness into exposure. Gunfire breaks the silence in short, controlled bursts, echoing through the ruins before fading again. No commands follow. No visible coordination remains. The city absorbs every sound and gives nothing back. There is no defined front line. Control shifts street by street, block by block, with no stable boundary between attack and defense. Movement is restricted to fragments of cover, where visibility lasts only seconds before disappearing into smoke, rubble, and collapsing structures. Every crossing becomes a calculated risk, where timing matters more than strength or numbers. A retreating soldier from the invading forces breaks into a run across a wide intersection. The movement is immediate and exposed, forced by pressure from unseen positions. A single shot interrupts. In mid-motion, the soldier collapses into the snow-covered debris without resistance. No return. Fire follows, and no movement answers it. The street falls silent again, but the battle does not pause. The ruins remain active, unstable, and unpredictable, as if the city itself continues to fight without end. Before the fighting intensifies, the situation inside Stalingrad in 1942 has already reached a breaking point. Entire districts have collapsed into open ruins, where streets replace front lines and visibility determines survival more than any formal command structure. The temperature remains at -15 degrees, turning every surface into a threat and every pause into risk. If you enjoy these immersive historical war narratives, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment about how long you think a position could realistically be held. Under these conditions, the discussion helps expand future episodes into deeper conflicts and scenarios. Both invading and defending forces operate without stable control of the city. Movement is fragmented, supply lines are disrupted, and communication is inconsistent at best. What remains is a struggle defined by exhaustion, cold, and constant exposure to unseen threats. In this environment, survival is not determined by superiority in numbers alone, but by endurance under conditions that remove almost every traditional advantage. Every decision carries weight, and every hour reshapes the structure of the battle unfolding across the frozen ruins. The invasion into Stalingrad is driven by one objective: total control of the Volga corridor. The city is not valued for its structure, but for its position. Whoever holds it controls movement across the river and disrupts supply lines deeper into the front. The order is not to occupy intact territory, but to break resistance block by block until no organized defense remains. The invading forces enter with a strategy built around fragmentation instead of large formations. They deploy in small, mobile units designed to advance through streets and intersections. Their goal is to avoid predictable routes, forcing defenders to react to multiple pressure points at once. The city becomes a grid of simultaneous engagements rather than a single battle line. Advancement is slow but deliberate. Every intersection is tested before movement continues. Suppressive fire is used to deny open space, forcing defenders into constant repositioning. There is no reliance on armored support in the streets themselves. Instead, the focus remains on controlled movement and coordinated pressure from multiple directions. The defending forces rely on knowledge of the terrain rather than numbers. They occupy collapsed structures, wrecked vehicles, and elevated fragments of buildings that still overlook the streets. From these positions, they observe movement patterns and identify gaps in the invading advance. Among these positions, a single sniper maintains visual control over a critical junction. Positioned above street level on unstable elevation, the sniper provides early warnings of movement across open ground. Each shot is deliberate, aimed not at volume but at disruption, forcing the invading units to slow and reassess their advance. The presence of the sniper becomes a structural advantage for the defenders. Movement through the exposed streets is no longer predictable, as any crossing can be observed and interrupted from above. The invading forces begin adjusting their timing, waiting for brief windows where visibility narrows. Despite this, the pressure continues. The invading units adapt by increasing simultaneous crossings at multiple points, attempting to overwhelm observation. The streets become layered with overlapping movements, designed to dilute the effectiveness of any single defensive position. By the end of the initial push, neither side has achieved dominance, but the structure of the battle has already formed, attackers controlling momentum through fragmentation, and defenders relying on precision, elevation, and limited but critical observation points. The fighting inside Stalingrad intensifies as movement deeper into the city forces both sides into narrower, more exposed routes. Streets that once allowed flexible advancement are now reduced to forced crossings, where timing and positioning determine survival more than coordinated strength. Every block becomes a controlled point of pressure rather than a space to maneuver. Invading units continue their advance in fragmented groups, but repeated losses from elevated precision fire begin to alter their behavior. The sniper's position, hidden within upper fragments of collapsed structures, repeatedly disrupts movement across key intersections. Advancing groups are halted mid-crossing, forcing sudden pauses that break momentum and expose following units to delayed timing gaps. In response, the invading forces begin structured counter-sniper operations. Certain units are no longer assigned to forward movement, but specifically to detection. These teams begin analyzing firing intervals, tracking the delay between shots, and mapping the likely angles from which rounds originate based on impact direction and line-of-sight exposure. Simultaneously, movement across adjacent streets is deliberately increased to create overlapping visual noise. The intention is to force the sniper into revealing position through repeated engagement choices, while simultaneously reducing the clarity of any single firing origin. Additional efforts focus on elevation scanning. Units systematically observe higher structural remains, identifying potential vantage points capable of overlooking multiple intersections. Rather than reacting to individual shots, the strategy shifts toward isolating recurring zones of influence across the battlefield. Defensive forces respond by reducing predictability. The sniper does not maintain consistent timing or pattern. Alternating between silence and sudden engagement, shots are no longer evenly spaced, making direct tracking through timing analysis increasingly unreliable. Despite these countermeasures, the disruption caused by elevated precision fire continues to slow the overall advance. Movement remains possible, but no longer stable, as every crossing carries the possibility of immediate interruption from unseen elevation points above the streets. The fighting continues under worsening conditions, as the invading forces persist with their counter-sniper efforts. After sustained observation of firing patterns, impact angles, and repeated scans of elevated ruins, a narrowing set of possible positions is identified. Movement across adjacent streets is intensified, forcing the defender to respond more frequently and revealing subtle consistencies in timing and direction. Coordination among specialized detection units increases. Instead of focusing on advancement, they concentrate fire and observation toward a limited cluster of elevated structures that repeatedly align with prior shot trajectories. Each suspected position is tested indirectly through suppressive fire-enforced movement below, designed to confirm or eliminate viable vantage points without direct exposure. Eventually, a final sequence of coordinated pressure isolates the sniper's location. Multiple units converge their attention on a single elevated ruin overlooking a key intersection. The position, once partially concealed by debris and shadow, is forced into visibility through sustained pressure from below and lateral angles. A concentrated burst of fire follows. The elevated position is struck repeatedly, eliminating any remaining concealment. The sniper is neutralized before any further shots can be fired, and the line of precision disruption across the streets abruptly ends. Across the defending positions, the impact is immediate. The removal of sustained overwatch leaves a noticeable gap in control over open crossings. For the first time in several hours of continuous combat, movement across certain intersections occurs without interruption, altering the perceived balance of risk. The invading forces register the change quickly. Without the constant threat from above, movement becomes less fragmented, and coordination across streets regains partial stability. However, the environment remains unchanged, and the conditions that shape the battle cold, exhaustion, and structural collapse continue to dominate every decision. What remains of the defensive network continues to resist, but without its elevated observation advantage, the structure of engagement shifts decisively toward ground-level exchanges, where reaction time and positioning replace long-range disruption as the primary factor shaping survival. As the battle stretches beyond 72 continuous hours, Stalingrad becomes less a structured battlefield and more a frozen environment that consumes both sides equally. The removal of elevated precision fire has already shifted the rhythm of combat, but it does not restore control or stability. What remains is exhaustion layered over continuous exposure. Invading forces attempt to maintain pressure through renewed ground-level advances, but their movements are increasingly fragmented. Short pushes across intersections are followed by longer pauses, not for tactical repositioning, but due to physical strain. Coordination weakens as repeated exposure to extreme cold and sustained hunger begins to degrade operational capacity. Defensive positions continue to resist across scattered sections of the city, but their effectiveness is no longer defined by advantage. Engagements are brief, close, and irregular, shaped by survival rather than structured planning. Both sides are forced into the same condition, moving only when necessary and holding still whenever possible. As time progresses, the invading forces begin showing clear signs of breakdown caused by the environment itself. Hunger reduces reaction speed, while the extreme cold limits endurance to short intervals of activity. Units that once maintained coordinated pressure can no longer sustain continuous movement through exposed streets. Communication becomes unreliable, signals are delayed, regrouping becomes inconsistent, and decisions take longer to execute. The battlefield remains active, but the ability to maintain organized pressure deteriorates with each passing hour. Eventually, the invading command structure reaches a conclusion driven not by tactical defeat, but by survival limitations. The combination of extreme cold and prolonged hunger makes continued presence inside the city unsustainable. Remaining inside Stalingrad no longer offers operational value compared to the cost of maintaining forces in such conditions. Withdrawal orders are issued. Units begin abandoning contested intersections and withdrawing from the frozen urban grid in staggered movement, prioritizing survival over territorial control. There is no final confrontation, only a gradual disengagement from a battlefield that has exceeded human endurance limits. The defenders do not pursue, they remain in position as the city quiets, not through victory in a single moment, but through persistence across conditions that eventually force the opposing force to leave the frozen ruins behind. What remains is not a decisive triumph, but endurance under extreme conditions that eventually force one side to leave. The city preserves the traces of 72 hours of continuous conflict, now buried under snow and silence. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment how long you think a position could realistically be held under these conditions.